Hi, this is Kimberly. This is a synopsis of Chapter 12 of the book Letters from Christopher, Tragic Confessions of the Watts Family Murders. This book is by Cheryln Cadle, and the chapter is entitled Later, the Morning of the Murders. This chapter starts off telling about when Nicole Atkinson, but the author does not use her name. She is only referred to as Shanann's friend and that friend. The author states, she and Shanann were supposed to go look for a car for her to rent through Thrive, unquote. I didn't know that Thrive also rented cars. The next statement is, she tried to get in by the front door code, but that would not work either. There was a latch on the top of the door, and she let the door open only a few inches. So if the front door code did not work, how was she able to open the door a few inches? With the door latch on, you just said the front door code did not work. So this friend contacted another friend, and well, before you know it, and I quote, two of Shanann's friends were at the frantic stage and both called Christopher, telling him he needed to get home. In his mind, he could not believe how quickly they had found out she was gone. That was not something he had thought of ahead of time. End quote. Well, didn't she say that Chris had planned for weeks and also daydreamed about how it would be, about how this was all going to go down? If you'll remember from Chapter 8, and I quote, he must have felt empowered knowing all the things are going as planned, end quote. Also, quote, this is something he had been fantasizing about for a while, end quote. Also, when he was distant and withdrawn from her, in his mind, he was planning how he could kill her. He said he had been having these thoughts for a couple of weeks. That's a quote from Chapter 8. Mr. High IQ did not think to consider that the day all of this happened, or happened to him, as has been said, both by him and his mother, but it was the first day of school for the girls, and Shanann had a prenatal appointment. But to be fair, he had his head up his ass, so he must not have put the engagements in his his calendar app. I just thought I would throw these things in to liven up this chapter. It's boring, and the majority of it is from Discovery, but it leaves out key items like names. At least give them a generic friend 1 and friend 2. It appears that Mrs. Cadle did not interview or question Chris about Chapter 12, named Later, the Morning of the Murders. My hunch is the first half of this chapter is loosely based on the Discovery, and the last half of this chapter is taken directly from the Discovery. But before we get there, to the second half, we have this random sentence. Quote, he had to be called the second time, end quote. Huh? Maybe she means a second time? And then this one that is similar. Christopher said he believes she called the third time. I think maybe she means a third time. I don't know. When it's not a direct quote from the Discovery, it's babble. This chapter goes on to tell the familiar story of this unnamed friend driving to Shanann's doctor's office, calling the police, and having her son stand on her car to look through the windows of the garage door. The writer does a nearly identical copy-paste of the officer's report. It doesn't sound natural for a book author to say, quote, the reporting party had called about her friend Shanann Watts. When the second officer arrived, Christopher exited the front door and introduced himself, end quote. And then this one, Christopher put Dieter on the back deck. Dieter is misspelled again. Again, remember in Chapter 6, when Dieter gave Nikki a tour of the house? He apparently withheld the correct spelling of his name when he introduced himself. I suppose it was to protect his identity. So far, nothing new, except Shanann's friend still does not have a name. I found this chapter to be very boring, as I already knew everything by heart, just from reading Discovery. If one did not know, it was a pretty good description of how it went down, especially since the majority was a report composed by well-trained law enforcement. Then another unnamed friend is brought into the chapter. She lives out of town and she talked to police. My newly formed habit of consulting a document called Christopher Watts Redacted Final quickly revealed unnamed friend number 2 to be Cassie Rosenberg. Mrs. Cadle said, quote, and a well-being check was issued statewide, end quote. What is that? I Googled it. Nothingness came up. The closest thing I could find was that they were declared endangered and missing by CBI on Tuesday, August 14th, 2018. Could that be what she meant? The author did not state that the rest of the chapter deals with the next day, August 14th. And remember, this chapter was supposed to be about the morning of the murders, August 13th. This is probably an insignificant detail for those who haven't studied this case inside and out, up and down, side to side. But she took from discovery, without deviation, mind you, the bit about strong odor of cleaning chemicals, the spotless house, vacuum lines in the carpet, sports show on television, girls' shoes on the porch, Chris's demeanor, on and on. Most of this was word for word, copy-paste. Yes, I checked and it was mostly copy-paste and finished out this very tedious, nondescript chapter. I have nothing to add except if you do not have this book and you want to know exactly what was in this particular chapter and what it was like, I will refer you to consult Discovery page 50 for the bit that begins with Nicole Atkinson alerting the police and blowing up Chris's phone, and then Discovery page 84 for the entertaining read in the matter of Chris allowing a full search of his home. And that will be the end of this video. I'm going to go nurse my cold now. I will pick up chapter 13 in the next video. Thank you for listening and bearing with me.